Okay, so I think we can begin now. Hello, everybody. I'm Stuart Malina, and welcome to the sixth of our Lake Placid happy hours, Lake Placid Sinfonietta happy hours. Today, we actually have a special live cast from Lake Placid because our guest is up in Lake Placid for the weekend and is broadcasting. Well, I'll let you say. Please welcome our wonderful bassoonist, Greg Quick. How are you,
Hello,
Greg?
broadcasting from the Baxter Studios here in Lake.
Yeah, Robin Baxter is the chairman of our board, and she's having a get together for some Sinfonietta folks. So hopefully we'll get to see Robin a little bit later. How are you today?
I am good. I'm feeling very fortunate to be able to make a trip up here. I'm living near Syracuse, and so it's a 4-hour drive. And right now, we're taking advantage of the for whatever the COVID malaise we're all dealing with is. In Syracuse, we're doing very well, and we're doing pretty well up here. So we thought we really miss everybody, and we wanted to come, and I'm certainly glad we can. So,
It has been an odd summer, hasn't it? How long have you been coming up to Lake Placid?
about 8 years now, I'm guessing. Um, and I started, the first summer up here was the trial weeks, and Ron Spiegelman had asked me to come up. The Syracuse Symphony had just shut down, among other things. So, he's being rather kind, and I'm certainly glad he was because this is an awesome place. Uh, you know, um,
It is indeed. So how long did you play with Syracuse before it collapsed?
I joined Syracuse when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
I played there 33 years. So if anybody wants to do the math, you know how old I am. Uh, it was a pretty good orchestra, and unfortunately, sometimes orchestras don't make it. There's all sorts of reasons for that. None of them are particularly pleasant ones sometimes, but it does happen, and that's what happened there. But music is music; it goes on, and I'm glad to just be part of that world still. And this is a wonderful spot up here for it.
I
Well,
agree with you there. And well, thank you for joining us. That's the first thing. And then just to go over a little bit of housekeeping things. On your Zoom screen, you've got two different ways of getting things to us. One is through the chat room, and the other is through the Q&A. At the bottom, you have two buttons, one for chat and one for Q&A. We will do our best to answer the questions that you send to us. If you have questions for me or for Greg, we will do our best to answer them. But in general, sit back and enjoy. I think this is going to be a very interesting one because really to start with, the bassoon is a very interesting instrument. It's not, it's not one that most, young kids aspire to play. What brought you to the bassoon?
well, it's kind of an interesting story a little bit. I mean, it's for all of us as musicians, something brings us to each of our instrument. And I was I was 10 years old, 11 years old. I forget what the age is. I was in seventh grade, towards the end of it, and the music program I was in schools managed to actually get a bassoon on their hands, and they needed somebody to play it. And I was playing clarinet. I was one of what do you have, 20 clarinets in a junior high school band. I was one of them. I wasn't first chair, so I think the guy said, "Good, I'm not going to waste my best clarinet player to do this with." And the band director said, "Hey, do you want to play bassoon?" And literally, I said, "Sure. What is it?" I didn't know, you know. And and then he said, here's what it is." And I said, "Sure, I'll play it." And I was kind of excited, something special, something new, something unique, and what kid doesn't enjoy that experience? And he put me in the locker room closet and says, "Well, when you learn how to play it well enough, come out and join us." And so I kind of self-taught for a week or so and managed to get through enough, and and somehow it worked out for me. I could play it, and
That's kind of amazing. And so, did they have an instrument for you? Is that he just handed you an instrument?
yeah, he handed me an instrument, and the program had just purchased it, so it happened to be brand new, which was very fortunate because it was in good shape. But here's a reed. I didn't know what reeds were. And anybody learning bassoon really shouldn't know what reeds are when they start out because you might start to think differently too soon.
It is certainly a disincentive, I think. Well, why don't you talk a little bit about what that means when you're playing a double reed? What's entailed in creating it? What is a double reed to begin with?
Well, I don't know if anybody see the camera well enough, but this is a bassoon reed, And it's a double reed because there's two reeds. There's a reed on top and a reed on the bottom. And, you know, and to make these, there's a plant that grows, and it's called, one description we think of it as is French cane. It's the stuff they make the cane furniture out of from France from 100 years ago. So it's a plant like that, you know, and you cut a piece of it and turn it into that. And, you know, you wind up with all sorts of knives and gadgets and gadgets and sandpaper this and tools. And over time, you learn how to get a little better at it, but it does take some time. You know, some always work better than others. And, you know, as a professional musician or any musician, you have to, you know, learn to just do the best you can with what you have. But
Well, when you come into a gig, how many reeds do you generally bring with you?
um, it depends on the gig and what I need it for. I mean, generally speaking, you know, you want to make sure you have at least one that works,
Yeah.
and that works well. But usually, I mean, everybody's a little different. I have a, hang on, actually, if I reach over the computer here, I have a little reed box, and it's got room for 5 reeds in it. So, you know, I'll have that with me. And, you know, at any time, 2 or 3 of them work pretty well. I usually have one in there that is, if I need to, I can make it better with work, but I don't want to break it in too soon, because if something happens to the other 4, I need to have something to, you know, look forward. I mean, there's a strategy involved, and everybody's different. So yeah.
And do things happen in performance? I mean, have you had a reed break on you while you're playing it, or?
Very rarely, but yes, it does happen. You know, that doesn't happen very much, but very rarely it does. And, you know, sometimes one's playing and you start to just get, you know, like, yeah, I'm going to try the other one now. I'm just not happy, you know. And so, you know, and the various things that happen with it, you know, they just wear out, or sometimes, I mean, they are sensitive to humidity levels and altitude levels. There is a very slight difference coming to Lake Placid, where we're at about 1,700 feet or so, 1,800 feet, than there would be at sea level, for example.
Interesting.
People that would come up here from, you know, sea level would notice a slight difference. Not a massive one, not enough to really mess you up, but enough that, oh, I have to make an adjustment. You know?
Wow, that's interesting. And so the other question I have is, do you do you make reeds that are piece specific sometimes? I mean, if you have a particular kind of music, do you make a particular kind of reed, or are they basically general purpose?
You try for general purpose always. Every now and then you get lucky and one plays one piece really well, and you go, "Oh, good, I'm happy." But generally speaking, you try. At least that's what I try to do. Some people do. Like I say, everybody has their own style. Sometimes you make a reed and you realize it won't work for anything, but it'll work really well for this, and so you save it for, you know, I have to play really loud and, you know, make this thing sound like a baritone saxophone or something. I can make a reed for that. You know, it only sounds like a baritone saxophone, so you don't want to hear it otherwise. You know.
And the other thing about reeds is, how long does it take to make a reed, and how do you divide up your time between reed making and practicing?
Um, the At least half of my time on the bassoon is reed making, at least half. And this reed right here, you know, I'll call it an okay reed.
Uh-huh.
By the time you see something finished like this, just this, I have probably 35 to 40 minutes of time into just this piece of work, probably 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I make, you know, my percentage of reeds is I have to make 2 or 3 to get one of these. So
Wow.
put that on, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours just to get one of these. And it's a process that, you know, you do one step and then you wait 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And another step and you wait another 2 weeks, you know, and then another step and you put them ahead. You know, this is just, some people have steps where they just, you know, go and boom, and there they go. Their reeds last for 4 or 5 days, and then they go on to the next one. Other people make a reed and it lasts them for months. And generally mine go for a couple of weeks, you know,
Yeah.
generally.
And I know that lately there have been new technologies where they're making plastic reeds. Have you tried plastic reeds, and do they work okay?
Work surprisingly well for clarinet and saxophone. Not
Hmm.
the greatest, but they do kind of work surprisingly well for them. They tried, the company was making that was having some success with those reeds. Uh, and it's a matter of taste. Not everybody agrees with what I just said, but I'm saying surprisingly well. and they tried making them for the bassoon, and a few. There's still some out there. They would cost over $100 a piece for just one of these things made by them, and the company withdrew from the market because they're not satisfied with the quality. These work better still. You know, uh, they're interesting, and they're, you know, for some instruments and some players and for some pieces, they probably have a very good use. I'm not interested in going down that road. I'm managing to get by with this. I'm good. You know?
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, so before we have you play your first selection, do you want to give us just kind of a tour of the instrument? What is a bassoon? What are the various components of it?
Okay, the bassoon is a double reed instrument, and it is what is called a conical bore instrument, which means it's a cone. If you look at a flute, for example, it's a straight tube, like an organ is a straight tube. A clarinet is a straight tube. But if you look at a bassoon, um, the sound comes in this end, which is very small, and it comes out this end, which is much bigger. And so there's a gradation of expansion that is kind of like a cone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a conical bore instrument. They're made of wood. Um, they have histories that go back to all sorts of instruments that use double reeds. Uh,
That's one of the older instruments, isn't it? Certainly of the woodwind family.
yeah, I mean, they've been around for a long time in one form or another. It's they're related to the oboes, obviously, and as all, so they came from the same origin as an oboe, you know, English horn, the bassoon, the same origins, just different sizes. And you know, this is large enough that it's about, you know, it's pushing 9 feet long by the time it's all done in terms of its length. This piece up here is called a bocal, and it's made of metal, and it's a tad bit fragile, so you have to be careful. And then there's another piece that comes here, and you break it into pieces so that you can, you know, and have access to it to clean it.
Sure.
And all sorts of, I mean, it makes no sense. It comes all the way down to the bottom. There's a tube in the bottom that comes, oops, let me get up. There's a tube in the bottom, but the tube comes up all the way out the other end until it comes out the other end. And, you know, you basically just attach a reed onto this bocal, and out comes the sound. It's all musical instruments are simple machines. And in the bassoon, like any other, you have a power source, that would be me.
Yep.
You have an oscillator, or what you might call it, something that physically transforms the power into something else and resonates it, which would be the reed. And then you have the bassoon, which simply is a resonator, you know, and it's a very simple machine in that regard. And then, you know, we all spend lifetimes trying to work a simple machine.
That's right. Well, I've heard tell. I am not a bassoonist. My son plays bassoon, and I've been to a whole number of lessons. It certainly has the reputation of being one of the more difficult instruments to play well.
I think every instrument has a wall where things are difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Sunda has that reputation in part because it's a bit maybe large, and you know, you have a lot of more physical distance to move. Everything's not quite as controlled and easy to get to. You know, you have to move fingers a long way for things, for example, whereas in other instruments you don't. So you have a little bit, you know, it's a little bit easier to
Sure.
be facile, you know. But every instrument is difficult when you get to a certain level.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Any skill, in fact, to do masterfully, I think takes a great deal of work. So anyway, so would you like to play something for us?
I do. I have a couple things to play for you, and there's kind of a reason for it. The first thing I'll play for you is I just enjoy music, and I just say that as a point of I'm so glad to just be involved in this big world of music, you know. And music is music is music, you know, no matter where you are, what you do. Every culture, society in the world has music. We all know this, but it's true. We've had them before we knew each other 10,000 years ago, you know. And somehow it speaks to us as humans. And so on the piece I'm going to play for you, the reason I'm saying that is not originally written for bassoon, but it's great music. It's Johann Sebastian Bach, and it's just a short little section of one of his cello suites. It's a sarabande from Suite Number 1 in G major. the cello uses double stops. Obviously, in bassoon, you can only play one note at a time. So I make some adjustments to play it, but it's music. And so anyway, I like it. So you're going to have to listen to it, okay?
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thanks, Greg.
Oh, Stuart, you're muted. Stuart, you're muted.
I am back.
Okay.
I do that more often than I like to admit. What I was trying to say silently a moment ago was that I really love the way that it translates from cello to bassoon and the way that the double stops became arpeggiated chords. It was really quite lovely and quite lyrical. What is it about that piece that you particularly like?
Well, you just said it. It's lovely and lyrical,
Yeah.
And it's one of those pieces, and the Bach sarabands are this way for me in particular. The Bach suites in general, the sarabands in particular, is there are just so many different ways you can find to play them. You know, I ran through that and played it one way. I could play this, you know, 3 or 4 more times, and a couple of them will be completely different, and it's still music.
Well, and it's one of the beauties of Bach. He gives you so few instructions. He
And well,
really leaves it up to each individual player.
it's not just Bach. Music is music, and when you find it, it's just, you know, I wonder what it looks like from over here. Sometimes you say to yourself, and that's what you do. You know?
Yeah.
Um, so you know, I don't know. Years ago, I don't know, Stuart, if you've had the discussion between absolute music and
Oh, of course.
programming music, and this is absolute music. It's just music.
Yeah.
It's there, and you got to, you know, you can go find it, or it will find you, or you can have both happen.
Well, and the other wonderful thing about music in general is that absolute music becomes programmatic music as soon as it's heard, because each person comes up with their own images and their own stories and their own personalization of what they're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And with Bach, it's incredibly easy because it's tremendously evocative music.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and that saraband, for example, for me is very hypnotic and takes me to a very calm, serene place.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, I mean, I occasionally work with students or also myself, but the last thing I have anybody that I'm working with learn is the saraband. I said, you have to, to find the saraband, you have to wait, even though it's slow and this and that. You know, the other stuff is there, and you can figure it out. You can hear a tune, and follow a rhythm, and make a structure, and all that. Saraband's wait, and
That's really interesting. I like that very much.
well, I mean, you can play them anytime, but the more there's a lot to them. You ask why? I just like them, so that's what I was playing.
So let's continue your story. So, were you growing up in the Syracuse area?
No, I'm from near Toledo, Ohio.
Uh-huh.
I grew up. Our property was literally on the state line. We lived in Michigan. We had a Toledo man with us, and my family. My parents were both teachers, but their origins had a lot to do with farming, and I spent a lot of time. In fact, my had my dad had a small nursery that I grew up. I learned to drive a tractor before a car, those types. Um, uh, but I spent a lot of time on farms growing up. Music was always a little bit a part of it, and some of that was church. Everybody sang in choirs growing up, and that was really, as a young child, you get a chance to sing in a children's choir. It's like, oh, this is fun, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I was just thinking this is fun, and I enjoyed that a little bit. So but there really was, when and you're gonna do what for a living? I had an awful lot of really, and
So I'm assuming your parents were not musicians themselves.
my father not at all. My mother had a little bit of musical training, singing, but
Hmm.
and a little bit of piano. I mean, I started on piano in, I don't know, first grade. I forget, a little, and that's a very good start for everybody.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of music. Um, uh, it's kind of my approach to just music. I mean, it's part of us who we are as humans, and why you need to teach it in schools is not necessarily so that you can have nice band concerts and have success for individuals, and feel good stuff, but it's part about being human, and it's something we all are, and it's, uh, it's the same reason we study sciences or arts or history or anything else. It's just if you can understand a little bit about music is much more important than knowing how to play an instrument.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you very much. It is a basic humanity question. It's not even a question of culture,
no, it's
because culture implies that it's something that's separate from humanity.
yeah,
It actually is part of humanity.
you hear something, and it's like playing that Bach. I mean, I'm playing it, I'm looking at the notes, but I'm hearing something while I'm playing it, and I'm trying to play what I hear versus create something and wonder what it sounds like. I'm trying no, I don't know how to describe that. Anyway, enough. Yeah.
No, no. So you've made the decision to become a musician. Everyone's a little bit questioning. So where did you end up going to school?
Let's go to University of Michigan. Uh,
Fantastic.
I mean, growing up playing bassoon, I had opportunities, and I went to a music camp in the summer called Interlochen. And the one summer I was there, the University of Michigan was there, kind of recruiting students, and they had a scholarship audition. And there were, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us that they heard, I don't know how many kids, but they gave like 4 or 5 full scholarships, and
Wow.
you know, and so that was pretty exciting. And I did it in part. The bassoon teacher they had there was, I mean, the bassoonist here before, David Van Hoosen, was one of the icons of music teaching in the 20th century. But the teacher I had was right there with him, Hugh Cooper. And
Uh-huh.
the names are legendary in the bassoon world for all sorts of positive contributions they've made toward both bassoonists and music in general. And
That's cool.
there, I had a great time. I learned a lot, and I got a job after my junior year and playing in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and
Hmm.
and then 2 years later, I got a job in Syracuse and came here, and one thing led to another, and I kind of like Syracuse for a number of reasons. I met my wife. We had raised a great family. I got to come here. I mean, what's wrong?
So did you meet Ron Spiegelman in Syracuse?
Yeah, he conducted us for as a kind of a guest conductor of sorts, but quite a bit. I mean, he would do a number of pops programs with us in particular,
Hmm.
and we would see him probably over the years before I came here. He probably had at least a 10-year, maybe 15-year history in Syracuse of doing just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit every year. So he was one of our, not a formal staff conductor, but a very familiar face.
Yeah. And so he invited you to come up for a trial a few weeks, I imagine.
I mean, he knew it had just happened at Syracuse too, and he would
Yeah.
come. And he said, you never know what might happen. I said, well, he says, somebody else will probably. I said, that's fine. I just love to come up. And I felt very. I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time, but I realize now.
Well, so what is it that makes the Sinfonietta special? What is it about your experience there that you love so much?
No, it's not just one thing. I mean, it's a there's a bit of a family atmosphere up here, which I think is very special. Um, is obviously when any musicians go to other summer festivals, you see musicians from other parts of the world, other cultures, other parts of the country that you don't see the rest of the year, and you all bring some fresh ideas with you and some fresh listening and some fresh effort and that's it doesn't matter whether you're here or whether you're at Aspen or you pick your music festival. Um, all of them have that, and that is that most every musician at every festival treasures that. That's kind of a universal.
Yeah.
Obviously, the community is a wonderful place. I believe in this place. I think it's pretty special. Yeah.
And in terms of the playing experience, it's a little bit different from playing in a large symphony orchestra. You're the only bassoonist, and a lot of the time, you're playing a heck of a lot more than you would be playing if you were just playing, like when we did the Beethoven Fourth Symphony.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
were
yeah.
playing horn parts, you were playing flute parts. Talk a little bit about that, and does it take a different kind of conditioning? Is there an exhaustion that sets in because of that?
Exhaustion too much. I mean, most of the time you're playing, a fair amount anyway. Every now and then, you wish you could come up for air, but the hardest part many times is remembering which page turn to do when, and because you're going back and forth between this part and this part, and like I've played a number of Beethoven symphonies. I couldn't tell you how many performances, well into the tens, maybe, and uh, I'm so used to, you play here, you got these seven measures, you make this page turn, and then you go. Here you play those seven measures. You have to make that page turn really fast and then train your eyes to go over here and make the page turn, not where they always, So the hardest part is trying to, keep track of everything new you need to do. Most of the time it works.
Oh yeah, I was actually kind of blown away by that. It was the thing that I was least certain of coming into my 2 weeks there, and right away my whatever fears I had were put aside because you guys were incredible.
Soon I don't have it as difficult as for, oh my God, second horn here. I have to say that, but uh, because bassoon, generally speaking, most symphonies plays all the time anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
Unless you subtract something to put something else in, which occasionally has to happen, which is hard to do because you're used to already playing something. The fatigue level is pretty static, and you can't be. I can't assign you a part. You've already got something to do.
Yeah.
And
So there is a question that just came in from Allison Baxter, and it's for me. Stuart, do you have to transpose a lot of the music for the musicians? A lot. Is it hard to find music specifically for this kind of orchestra? Well, there is music for this kind of orchestra, and that's been one of the eye openers for me is discovering this repertoire for very small orchestra. But yes, it's not really transposition. That's a very particular thing of changing keys. But I do have to do a lot of arranging, rearranging, reorchestration of music. And one of my projects during this COVID pandemic has been to actually create parts for certain pieces for the players so that they'll have an easier time than they would having to go back and forth. So, for example, I did a new orchestration of the Mendelssohn Scottish Symphony. That one was particularly challenging because it has four horn parts. But I think I did a very nice job. And so everyone will have their beautiful part that is just theirs, very different from the original. But I do think that it's going to facilitate an easier time for certain music. But good question.
may I say, we truly appreciate that.
I'm glad to hear it. That makes me happy. What are the things you like to do in Lake Placid that are extra musical?
Well, if you know me enough, you know I like to play golf. So, yeah, if you need a fourth, call me.
And are you a good golfer?
It doesn't matter.
Is anyone a good golfer if you ask them, is the question.
Most everybody thinks they might be a little better than they are, but once they get out there, no, we remember.
And are there particular places that you like hanging out in Lake Placid?
I mean, this summer we probably won't do it because it's crowded there, and we're trying to be careful of the COVID and all that. But one of the favorite things to do is just that little walk around Mirror Lake. Um, you know, we'll be back next summer. We'll do it then.
It is pretty spectacular, and
And there's, we've managed to make acquaintances and friends with many people in the community here, and just spending time with them, you're talking about favorite things and places. I would say that
Hmm.
it is a very, very nice people. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. So looking back at your life in Syracuse for the rest of the year when you're not up in Lake Placid, is now that the Syracuse Symphony no longer exists, I know that there's a new orchestra formed in Syracuse. Do you play with them with Symphoria?
I mean, it's you look at the advantages and chances in life as they occur. My parents are both pushing 90 years old right now,
Wow.
and literally about 5 years ago, I've got to do the math. About 5 years ago, an opening occurred in an orchestra in Detroit called the Michigan Opera Theater, which is the opera company of Detroit, basically. And
Hmm.
it's a very good opera company. It doesn't
Yeah.
do a lot of work, but it's a very good opera company. And an opening occurred, and a week before that, one of my brothers and I were thinking, we need to be thinking about something to help take care of mom and dad. And lo and behold, I took the audition and I got the job. And so I play there now. Play with other groups in that area as a sub. I'm kind of
Hmm.
a musician. I play here. I get to spend a little more time. Um, not, I don't think of myself as living the rat race anymore.
It's a
And
nice feeling.
having said that, a couple of years when I was doing work, I worked harder than I'd ever worked before in my life. There was one time when I was on only 10 weeks that year, maybe.
Yeah.
I played in Minnesota. I played with. Well, I've been to. This is a nice shirt. Yeah, I was.
You did the life, sure. But how nice to be able to play that opera repertoire. It's a very special, wonderful repertoire.
There's. It's. You talk about absolute music and singing qualities, and is just yeah. Some of the music in opera is just breathtakingly beautiful. I love Puccini. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's among my favorite things. And so you also teach.
I do teach some. I've actually stopped teaching a year ago
Uh-huh. Okay.
university, but I stopped. But I still have a few students occasionally. Although now it's all Zoom lessons. As much as this is a lovely experience, I miss you in person. I do.
Oh no, I know. It's interesting when I talk to friends of mine who are instrumental teachers. They said that the first couple of weeks it was actually a positive thing because it gave the players a different way of assessing what they were doing. But then it starts getting old and you really do miss the human contact.
And on bassoon in particular, the instrument's this big, and you can't see what the right hand is doing, and you can't see all sorts of things, and you can't just in any instrument you can't step back and watch and observe, through the Zoom experience.
Yeah. Well, would you like to play something for us? A second selection?
I do, and it's a bit connected to the first, in that I would consider this to be absolute music too. And it's an Argentinian composer, um, Piazzolla, and he wrote. He's best known for the tango, and you probably know between the two of us lots of things. I imagine you may know a little more than me.
I know lots of Piazzolla and I love every piece that I've heard of his.
I've come in love with him. Anyway, this is a selection of tango etudes he wrote. He wrote them for flute, I think, first, but maybe violin first. Anyway, I've just taken them and looked at them and figured out, they sound pretty good on bassoon too. And they're absolute music. They're a bit related, in my opinion, to the sarabands from Bach, and that uh, you can do uh, all sorts of things with them. Um, just as a side story, we all learn from different experiences growing up, and John Lennon had a quote. At least it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But I remember hearing this back in the '70s or early '80s, yeah, and about music. And he said, "All music is a chair. It's just how you want to sit in it." And and that's kind of how I look at the sarabands from Bach, and that's how I kind of look at this. So I'm going to play Piazzolla Tango Etude number 4. It's slow and rather lyrical, which all know I like. So enjoy.
Fantastic. That is a beautiful piece. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard that before.
Very pretty. And
So, did you discover this because you were like, "Oh, I like Piazzolla, and I know that there are these etudes. I'll just buy it and give it a try."
no, well, I heard a flute player play it once,
Hmm.
and actually a different one. And interesting enough, it was, one of these things was, I don't know why they like those pieces. The other person was, the flute player listening to it. And I was listening to it. I kind of like it. And I was curious about it. And so after hearing the one once, I looked it up and found I could get a copy. And I mean, this was in treble clef, which the bassoon doesn't normally read, but, I figured it out. And,
We're living in an interesting time now in terms of discovering music with the availability of all of these resources online that you can find music. Have you spent time, looking for things that you've never heard of before, or do you stick with repertoire that's basically what you've been playing for your? I mean, do you understand my question?
I do. I mean, everybody, I mean, we're a little bit, I'm doing that. I mean, part of me is, and I attribute some of it to the farming upbringing a little bit. There's a time and place for everything when you farm. Sometimes you're working 80 hours a day, and other times you get to just sit back and enjoy life and go fishing, and because that's what's there in front of you, and you don't get to fish a lot if you're a farmer, but occasionally you do. You've got some time when there's really not a whole lot to do, provided nothing goes wrong, and you can just sit back and watch.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm on a, I'm thinking we're in this for the long term in terms of musician, and so I'm enjoying just trying to just keep myself at an even pace and see what I find at an even pace. I am, as you mentioned, I do have when we have to go back inside. I've already blocked that in my head as a time to do what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear.
Harmful, and it comes and goes. I mean,
Yep.
I've had in the past too.
Not much golfing in the life cycle of a farmer.
No, most farmers don't play golf. Surprisingly, no, no, no. The
And,
ones that
and
don't argue with are good.
when you think about the state of music right now, do you have worries going forward? I mean, a lot of people are talking right now about how are we going to reemerge from this pandemic? What is music going to be different in the way it's presented, in the way that it's performed, in the way that it's consumed? What do you think about these things?
I think there's some element of truth that it's going to be different, um, because I think we're all going to be different, and you know, and so we're going to have, we'll see what that difference is when we get there. But in terms of music, music has been around for tens, if not 100,000 years, and music will be just fine. You know, it will thrive and grow, and I think at some point when we all come back from this, it'll be cherished. As will many things that are special. We're not unique in that regard.
Yeah, I like to think about that too, that people are really going to miss it, that absence, in fact, does make the heart grow fonder.
I mean, I miss it. I mean, this is just such a pleasure to be sitting here talking to you and actually playing something that you feel. And
Well, and you have an audience to the side, which is kind of fun.
we have a special guest going to come in later. Actually, I'll have to have another one come in too because I've lost a computer I need a password for to get in. I don't know. She's going to have to come in and open.
That's very funny. So, what else? I mean, what else would you like to tell us? I feel like we're covering a lot of ground.
I mean, I mean, among other things. Well, here comes the password specialist right now.
Fabulous.
Person on this planet, by the way, who happens to be my wife. So, Debbie, she can say hi.
Talk a little bit about your family. Hello, Debbie. Is Debbie a musician as well?
No, no, but she gets it, as if she had a choice.
That's right. It would be tough to stay together. Do you have children together?
I have two kids, two boys. One's, they're both about 30,
Hmm.
the other. And they are in Boston and in Connecticut. And they are not musicians, but they both have music as part of their lives, have in the past, and still do. Um, it's a little bit they have, and I cherish this as a parent. that they have an understanding of music. Whether they perform or not, they have some understanding of what it is. My oldest one had an interesting experience with that growing up because he was like, "Why do I have to be in band? Why do I don't want to do it? I don't want to do it." You know how kids can be, and they're true about it. They're not, they're telling you how they honestly feel. So you
Sure.
can't really walk away from that honesty. And but I mean, still, as soon as you can understand something to have a conversation with me about music, I'll let you quit. You know, just, that's you got to get to a level you can have a conversation about something in music that you can that you can say, I understand, I know what I'm talking about. You're not just reciting from a book or trying to pass a test. You can just comprehend something.
Absolutely. And there's a decided difference between learning about music and actually playing music. I've read in many places that the best way to develop audiences for the future is to put instruments into kids' hands.
Oh,
That it's
just
not enough just to play music for them.
you can make music with anything you have. I mean, tin pots and tin cans. A lot of kids do it.
Yeah.
And back to my son. So he had one of these conversations with me about it, where he came in and he asked me about it was a rock band, and I told him about guitar keys, along with it. What a guitar! This, and all of a sudden, a couple of light bulbs went on his head, and then when he's your son, actually, it may have flattered you and your son, but I think he's special in terms of his arranging and composing.
Oh, well, thank you.
But my son, for a high school graduation project, wrote a piece for his high school band. And
Oh, that's cool.
we stole all of it for Shostakovich. It was fine with me. I like Shostakovich,
As
but
do I.
yeah, but uh, but he did that, from a point of view of I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, to understanding the music enough to say, this part I like. I mean, just explore a little bit as his own level of creativity. And he
Yeah.
still occasionally play guitar and write stuff. Just he enjoys it, and that's I think that's special. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's the kid part of it is that we put so much effort on things like productivity, testing, and right, as opposed to what do you like, you know, and
It is a tough one, and when you're a musician and it's a huge part of your life, obviously, it's difficult to come to grips with the idea that someone may not have the same passion that you do. But I
yeah.
think your solution is quite a sound one.
I mean, it's just I mean, it's one of those things that just like you go to you grow up being music and you're successful and all that, and I don't know if I'm speaking just for myself, but an awful lot of it is some sense of self worth, self ego gratification. I'm happy, I'm good at something, and so you express that joy a little bit and all that. But then you go to college at some point, and that joy becomes irrelevant. You have to work, and anybody who's, and I don't care what your business is, for the most part, talent by itself doesn't always do it. Talent and work works, and sometimes just work works,
Yeah.
and but it becomes something else, and then as it becomes something else, I mean that's the part now that I find special because it's I get to play this thing, and we have better seats in the house than anybody, including you, because we
That is
get
true.
to watch the audience, even though they're in the dark. We get to watch the audience, and we've seen everything from people falling asleep and snoring to people that are just you can tell you're making somebody's day better, and you know personally I cherish that opportunity whenever I can, no matter who it is.
Yeah. I agree with you. And you mentioned before that you love playing Puccini, and you've mentioned that you love playing Shostakovich. Is there another particular repertoire that you're particularly fond of?
It kind of just depends on what I have in front of me at the time. I mean, the stuff we do up here is kind of is chamber music stuff. I mean, obviously, is spectacular. We it's hard. You've asked this question, and everybody goes, oh, and then we come up with a name. Okay, that's good. Like I
No,
said,
no, 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 not at all. I've been asked this question a million times, and I know the frustration.
I like composers that write well for bassoon. Shostakovich wrote phenomenally well for the bassoon. Um, you know, uh, there are other Mahler wrote well for bassoon, but his string writing is just uh, another level. And Bach, there's just whatever's in front of me. We have these rehearsals, and we're not there to learn the notes. We're not there to practice. We're there to figure something out. And most of the time when I'm there figuring out is what can I do now? Who's doing what? What do I hear in this year? What's the conductor doing? Sometimes we watch you even. And
Amazing.
but it's all part of this big puzzle we all try to put together. And the big part of it is, is there an opportunity here to do something or not? And sometimes there's not. It's like, okay, just do it, get it done, make it work. Let's be efficient. Let's be good, because we know that's what's needed. But other times there's just you walk in going, I don't know what's going to happen today, and I'm looking forward to finding out. I'm not expecting something to happen either. You just never know when music's going to happen. I mean, it doesn't happen every concert we play. It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it does. Music
It is extra special when it happens.
happen anywhere. A number of parents that watch their kids play their 6th grade band concert find that so special. That's music. It happens, and the kids are happy, whether they miss notes or not. Was it the Beethoven thing? To miss a note is forgivable. To play with that passion is unforgivable.
Oh my goodness, we've all been to many concerts. I can't remember a single one that didn't have mistakes.
Yeah.
And including the very best ones that I ever attended.
My teacher in college, like, if you ever think you're just playing something, you always got it right, you're not getting it.
It's true. You try to play perfectly.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you just try and create,
Yep.
Sometimes it works.
And I do want to point out one of the things that you talked about in terms of the chamber music aspects of playing up at Lake Placid. I mean, people are probably thinking, well, wait a second, it's a symphony. It's not chamber music, but because it's so few players, every moment is kind of like chamber music, where you're able to play off of each other in a different way than you might otherwise.
Chamber music is this broad term that we've identified to think of as, string quartet in the room with people with wigs on doing whatever, but it really is music in a bit more of an intimate setting. I mean, is really the one approach for it. Although I've heard chamber music on stages with 2,000 people in the audience. Everybody just getting a full-blown, really good experience with it. So that's a string quartet part of it. But but chamber music is you extrapolate a little bit. I used to do this for kids shows because when I would I've done quite a few of those. The honky tonks and bars, and we were talking about Scott Joplin. Playing in a smoky room with cigars and everything else is chamber music, and you're playing for people in a chamber.
In other words, it's actually almost more about the relationship that you have in a particular venue with the audience, because of the size of it, than the size of the ensemble per se.
Yeah, I mean, the size of the ensemble is a factor of it, because it has to be. You have to have you have to have a strong degree of individuality for everybody playing.
Uh-huh.
That part is a given, But assuming that in a venue, it's exactly that. I mean, we do a number of things up over the past few years here, where we have these little things we play in people's houses, and there's some of them are fundraising events, some of them have other purposes. But those are chamber music, and it's not that we're playing chamber music, but we're playing that kind of music with that type of interest.
Yep, that makes total sense. Well, I think we've got time now to meet our special guest, perhaps, or do you want to play a selection first?
Right here.
Hey, Rob.
Robin Baxter.
How are you?
Live from the Baxter Studios
Live
herself.
from Baxter Studios. I'm not going to play or sing, I promise. On behalf of the board of directors of the Lake Placid Symphonietta, we just want to say how much, first, that we miss you all. This is not Stuart's first season that we had anticipated. We were so excited when he was chosen, and unfortunately, this COVID-19 hit. But we do miss all our musicians. We miss their families. We miss our get-togethers. It's been a joy tonight having Greg in our house, and we've got a cheering section on the porch of a few in number, but we will be back in 2021. That is our hope. Everybody keep your fingers crossed for that vaccine. And we have been very lucky up here in the North Country. We haven't had a lot of COVID, so we all wish you well. We wish you to stay healthy, and we will see you in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
All your support. As you know, there's always costs that continue, even though we haven't had our musicians here. So we are grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you as well for the work that you do in at the hospital and in the whole medical profession. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Greg, do you want to introduce your last selection?
Well, I can do a couple of things for you. How much time do we have?
We have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Well, if this is about all I do, I will play one more very quick Bach Sarabande, and then we'll play something kind of special to the festival.
A surprise.
Perhaps. I have to get the right page up here. All right, this is another Sarabande. This is from his fifth cello suite. It's in C minor. And this one really does speak to the John Lennon quote about a chair. It's very slow. It's kind of mournful. And then what I play next will be a precursor to not being mournful for next summer, and I will leave it at that. The Sarabande from Bach Cello Suite number 5.
Wow. I actually think that's an extraordinary piece, given that at the beginning of the 18th century.
I mean, he wrote these as study pieces. Just for someone to work on better cello skills with.
It's harmonically so complex and so chromatic in the way it's structured. It's amazing.
I threw in the Piccadilly Third in the end myself.
I liked it. For those who are watching, that means that he ended in a major key rather than a minor key. It was lovely.
And then for the last piece, the last selection, and this is just kind of a precursor to next year. If you come to the Sinfonietta concerts for a year, there's always one piece we finish with every year, and we all. Debbie Fitz mentions that the one thing she fears the most every year is setting up the candles for this experience. We all extinguish candles one at a time. I'm not going to turn out any candles now. We're going to leave the lights on for you for next summer. The beginning of the Haydn Farewell Symphony finale. So
So instead of saying farewell, let's say au revoir.
Until we meet again.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a terrific finale to our series. Thank you so much for all of the attendees for joining us week after week. I wouldn't count out the possibility of doing some more of these in the off season. Let us know if it's something you would be interested in. And again, if you have any comments or suggestions, we are all ears. And you can contact us through the office or through our website. But more than anything, I just want to convey how much we missed playing for you this summer and how much we look forward to being back with you next summer. Thank you so much, and thank you again, Greg.
You know.
Take care.